We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Sunday night edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. Let me make sure my computer's plugged in. It is. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. The Final Four is set. We're recording here probably about 4 minutes after Auburn just clinched the fourth and final spot to San Antonio. And for the second time ever, first since 2008. And oh, by the way, this also happened in San Antonio in 2008. We have all four number one seeds advancing. Florida and Duke on Saturday, Auburn and Houston on Sunday. We're going to have kind of thoughts on all four games. You know, some of the games went final well over 24 hours ago. So I think it's going to be more quick reaction, maybe a little bit of a first look at maybe the best Final Four that we've ever had. And then I will say, yes, we got to talk Final Four. Yes, it is a special day on the sports calendar. But you know what day is special every single day? Portal season, okay? Because the portal went insane this weekend. Donovan Dent committed over the weekend where Aaron was wrong on that one. How about that? Commitments at Kentucky. Trayson Eaglestaff commits. We also had Flory Badunga, RJ Lewis entering the transfer portal. So it was a crazy weekend for the portal. But the focus, of course, right now to start will be on the Final Four. And so let's dive in. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. 53,000 subscribers. I think we can get to 60,000 before the end of this week in San Antonio, but we cannot do it without your support. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, but Apple, Spotify as well, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcast. The podcast is, of course, available outside of YouTube as well. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, but also make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod as well. Speaking of before we get started, I want to welcome in our friends. I want to welcome in our partners. I want to welcome in BetUS TV and BetUSTV.com. Okay, so I've told you all about BetUS TV, but they took us to the Final Four last year in Phoenix. We are headed back to San Antonio this March and April. And I'll tell you this, man, we are fired up to get on the ground, and we are going to be there on behalf of BetUS TV, okay? So what's great about BetUS TV, besides the fact that they are a great partner, is that they just have wall-to-wall 24-hour coverage of basically everything you want at BetUS TV. And BetUSTV.com as well. Okay, so it's not just college basketball. NBA playoffs are about to start ramping up. NHL playoffs, Major League Baseball season is here. Oh, by the way, European soccer, you name it, they have you covered. Again, wall-to-wall coverage at BetUSTV.com. The College Hoops crew, by the way, Corby, my guy Corby, Jeff Nadeau, formerly of Barstool, they do an incredible job. So BetUS TV for coverage, analysis, deep dives, and so much more. Speaking of so much more, guess what? If you're an Auburn fan, if you're a Florida fan, guess what? You're going to the Final Four. But even if you're not an Auburn fan or a Florida fan, here's the good news. You're going to want to do something next weekend if your team isn't in San Antonio. Well, guess what? I know I've said guess what 7 times, but we're done guessing because you have the answer right now. What you need to do is go to SeatGeek.com. SeatGeek is the #1 ticketing app on the internet. 70,000 downloads, on and on and on. I just bring it up because this website is unbelievable. They have tickets for everything. The Final Four, again, Major League Baseball, hockey, NBA, you name it. And the great part is they have a special deal for listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. Use promo code Torres at checkout. Promo code Torres at checkout. You get $20 off your first purchase. Doesn't just apply to the Final Four. Now, if you're going to the Final Four, if you're going to be in San Antonio, you can use SeatGeek.com promo code Torres. But even if you're not going to the Final Four, if you're going to a concert, if you're going to a baseball game, you're going to a hockey game, you're going to a tennis match, you're going to a golf tournament, if they're selling tickets on SeatGeek, you can use this promo, $20 off with the promo code Torres. That is the best deal going in ticketing. Thank you to SeatGeek. We appreciate their support. With that said, the Final Four is set. There is no more time to waste. So let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day. Listen, what else is there to say? What did I just tell you? The Final Four is set. It is that time, and I am so fired up because we have ourselves what I believe to be just an absolutely incredible Final Four. And you know what's incredible for the historic nature behind it? What is the historic nature? You already know. We have, for just the second time ever, all four number one seeds in the Final Four, first time since 2008. And I think what I just want to do is kind of quickly rip through all these games, and then we'll come back, maybe talk a little bit about the Final Four, early look at the matchups. And then, of course, we will wrap by talking a little bit of Portal. But let's get to the games. Let's start with the one that just went final, heroic, gutty, whatever you want to call it. Auburn gets the win on Sunday afternoon against the Michigan State Spartans in Atlanta. This was an awesome game, back and forth. Final score, Auburn 70, Michigan State 64. Auburn was pretty much the number one team in the country for most of the year. They had some ups, they had some downs, but they get to the finish line in Atlanta in this game. Listen, we could talk about a million different things and a million different scenarios, and what about this and what about that? Story of this game, it's Johni Broome. We just watched Willis Reed 2.0, okay? Listen, my guess would be that the late Sunday window in the Elite Eight is always, honestly, it's one of the most watched. It might be, outside of the Final Four, the most watched non-football game of the season. It's just a monster number. Pretty much outdraws the NBA. Maybe the NBA finals do better, whatever. Point is, there were probably 10 to 15 million people watching in that moment late in the game when Auburn was playing Michigan State. And I bring it up because Johni Broome goes down. I was actually on the phone with my buddy Drew, who runs our Torres on Auburn. He actually runs our Torres on St. John's page as well. Intern, great kid. And we're talking about something. And he goes, "Oh my God, did you see that, Torres?" And then as he says that, my wife screams in the background. She's like, "Oh my God, what happened to him? Is he okay?" And then I saw it was Johni Broome. And I was like, everybody calm down. I've seen this guy deal with all sorts of stuff. This was the guy, by the way, if you remember, popped popped his shoulder out early in the season. We're like, is he out for the year? He missed, I think, one game. I don't even think he missed a game, as a matter of fact. I think he came back the next game. I think he missed the back half of that game, comes back the next game. A few weeks later, they're playing South Carolina, first, second game of the SEC season. Literally looks like he snaps his ankle in half. What ends up happening? He ends up being perfectly fine. He misses about a week and a half. We thought it was going to be season ending at the time. It is not. And so Johni Broome, as soon as that injury happened, listen, you certainly are not hoping for the worst. But with Johni Broome, I'm just not worried. Listen, remember, we had Bruce Pearl on this show probably in late January, early February. It was right around the time they were really starting to establish themselves as probably the best team in college basketball, at least at the time. Duke's awesome. Houston's awesome. Florida's awesome. This isn't a conversation about who's the best team in college basketball. But I asked Bruce Pearl, if you remember, I said, "Coach Pearl, does Johni Broome have tiger blood?" And I don't mean that as an Auburn pun. Does he have tiger blood in him? Because every time he goes down with an injury, it looks awful. And then next thing you know, he ends up popping up and he's fine 5 minutes later. And so when this injury happened, yes, you hope it's not the worst. But the way I saw him say, "I'm done." I'm like, he's not done. He's coming back. I know my guy, Johni Broome. And so, of course, he goes to the locker room, comes back about 6 or 7 minutes later, and 6 or 7 minutes probably in real time, comes back and hits that three. And at that point, there's no way Auburn is losing. So they get the win. But to me, I think that the manner in which that happened, Johni Broome going down, I thought, to me, it spoke to who Auburn has been all year, okay? And so there's a lot of people that are just coming into college basketball this time of year. They don't know these teams. They're not watching them from November on like you and I. And I bring them up because I bring it up to very simply say is that if you follow this Auburn team, yes, Johni Broome is National Player of the Year or certainly in the conversation with Cooper Flagg, okay? But at the same time, we also have to give credit to the team around him, because when I look at this team, it has been so much more than just Johni Broome throughout this season. Todd Pettiford's amazing. Dylan Cardwell, Chaney Johnson, you go on every single night, it's always Johni Broome, but it's also another guy or two stepping up. And so I just bring that up because the story of this game was partly Janai Broome going down, but then it was also partly the fact that once he went down, nothing really changed. I think the stat they dropped on the scoreboard was the amount of, or on the broadcast was the amount of time between when he went out with injury and when he came back. Auburn actually outscored Michigan State 15 to 14 during that stretch. So in other words, they were +1 during that stretch. They gave up 0 ground. And so because of it, to me, that is a metaphor for who Auburn has been all season. Yes, Janai Broome is the star, but when he goes out or when he goes down, somebody else always steps up. And that's exactly what we saw on Sunday, and that's exactly who Auburn has been all year. So you look at Auburn, you look at the fact that they get this win. You know what the other thing that stands out to me as I think about this team? I think you got to go back to that first-round game against Alabama State in Rupp Arena in round 1 of the NCAA tournament. Remember, they had lost 3 of 4 at that time. Remember, they were not playing well at all. Remember, they were what were they trailing in the first half? I think it was 34-33 against Alabama State. They end up winning. Dylan Cardwell basically chews up his teammates, chews them out, says, this isn't good enough. This isn't acceptable. Stephen Pearl goes up to the podium and says, or I think he was on the radio broadcast and says, this isn't acceptable. And ever since then, they've been a different team. Now, I will say I did like the draw for them. I thought Michigan State was going to be a tough matchup. But this team, I think, has refound its mojo from earlier in the season. I think about the middle of that Michigan game on Friday in the Sweet 16. We did not do a Sweet 16 recap in any way, shape, or form on Friday night. But it was kind of close. It was kind of close. Then they went on, about a 10-0 run early in the second half, and they get the win. So Auburn has advanced. Auburn has survived. Now they will get set to face Florida in the next round of the NCAA tournament. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to come back. We're going to take a quick break. When we do, a little bit of an early break, because I want to come back. I want to talk about the other Elite 8 games. All 4 number 1 seeds are in the Final Four. This Final Four is going to be incredible. We'll take a quick break. We'll talk about that. And of course, we'll hit the portal as well. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what. Do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more. All available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Mora Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions @gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So let's go ahead and get to the rest of these Elite 8 games from over the course of the weekend. By the way, I think I screwed something up with this. Whatever. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking. Let's get to the rest of the Elite 8 games because there were some big ones there. Listen, this is a fun time. And a historic Final Four. All 4 number 1 seeds are headed there. So let's kind of keep working our way backwards. Auburn is headed to the Final Four, second time in school history. By the way, other people have brought it up, but I will as well. Listen, the fact that, yes, like we have a situation where Janai Broome comes back from injury. Obviously, of course, the history there, and I was telling somebody this right before he came on air, is like, you get scared because of the Chuma Okeke situation in 2019. For people who forget, he got hurt in the Sweet 16. You're worried Auburn makes the Elite 8. but Janai Broom as well. Janai Broom will be playing in the Final Four. We'll be monitoring for any sound. We'll talk about that later in the week. With that said, let's get to the other game on Sunday. Then we'll get to Saturday's games. Other game on Sunday. SEC had a great opening to Saturday with Florida beating Texas Tech and a late end to Sunday with, of course, Auburn taking care of Michigan State. The problem was in between, it was not pretty. Houston facing Tennessee. Final score in this game, 69-50. And let's be real. If you watch this game, you know that score was a little bit misguided. Why is that? It is because Houston was up 34-15 at the half. Tennessee had 15 points in the first half. I saw this stat. This was the lowest point total ever for a number 1 or number 2 seed in NCAA tournament history, okay? Not just in an Elite Eight. In any game, no team seeded 1 or 2 has ever had a worse performance in the first half than Tennessee. Houston dominant defensively. Now, it was interesting in the second half. Tennessee made a little bit of a run. They cut it to 10 with about 5.5 minutes to go. Houston bangs down back-to-back three-pointers. And next thing you know, they are cruising to their second Final Four of the Kelvin Sampson era, 7th in school history. A couple thoughts on this game. I'll be real. And this one's for the OG listeners of the Aaron Torres pod, okay? You know what I was thinking about when I was watching Houston just absolutely suffocate Tennessee in the first round or the first half of this game? It was the beef that I had in 2022 with my boy JJ Redick, okay? If you are new to this show, in 2022, Houston and Villanova played in the Elite Eight. It was a physical back and forth game. It was just vintage college basketball where both teams are just beating the crap out of each other, win and go home, whatever. And so I bring it up because the defense was incredible. The offense left a little bit to be desired. And that was where my famous beef with JJ Redick came in, because he was watching that game. He was a member of the media, and he's, I put out a tweet, something to the effect of like, yeah, I see all these NBA people complaining about the defense in this game. If NBA players were allowed to play defense like this, we would have we'd have a lot of ugly, low-scoring games in the 70s and 80s in the NBA as well. And so, of course, NBA Twitter was not happy with that. JJ Redick got in and said, tell me you don't know basketball without telling me you don't know basketball. But I ended up being 100% correct, because the bottom line is that college players are allowed to play defense in a different manner. We know the NBA has loosened its defensive rules to allow for more of a free-flowing offense. And I bring it up because sometimes you just get these kind of games in college basketball. But this reminded me of the 2022 Elite Eight game between Villanova and Houston. The big difference, of course, is that Villanova won that game and Houston lost. This one, Villanova wins. So Houston gets the win. We'll talk about them in a minute. I want to spend half a second on Tennessee. When I look at Tennessee, let me say this. I do feel a little bit bad for this program, and I don't feel too bad for the Vols because they're winning and everything. Just won a college baseball national championship. Just made the first ever 12-team college football playoff, back-to-back Elite Eights. But, Rick Barnes is 71, and I do just wonder how many more bites at the apple are you going to get with this guy and this team and this iteration of this program? Listen, I think Rick Barnes has done as good of a job as anybody could do pretty much anywhere in college basketball. Like, I think, we have this narrative about Rick Barnes of, Rick Barnes in March never comes through. Well, since 2019, guy has made 4 Sweet 16s. This is his second Elite Eight. He's won an SEC regular season title, I think 2 SEC regular season titles, an SEC tournament title. And again, back-to-back Elite Eights. I think any narrative about Rick Barnes in March is stupid, but there is one final hurdle. It is to get to the Final Four. And again, I just don't know if you're going to get better shots than the last 2 years. Last year, you have an All-American in Dalton Connect. He was unbelievable. We know how good he was last year. You run into Purdue, and I can make fun of Zach Edey and all of that. But at the same time, with Purdue, they were the better team. They win that game, and you sit there and say, we're never going to have a better chance. Then you have this year where a large part of that team comes back. You add Chaz Lanier, and I'll be honest, they were playing better than Houston throughout this tournament. Dominate Kentucky on Friday night, dominate UCLA in the round of 32, and you just felt like, is this the shot? Well, they don't get it. And it's not because they played bad or they didn't play well, but part of it is Houston is just awesome. Okay. So let's give credit to Houston for what they have done and what they did on Sunday. But at the same time, you look at Tennessee, it's like Sakai Ziegler's gone. I mean, that guy's a program guy. He's been there since 2022. He's been there since the Kennedy Chandler days. Remember those? Santiago Vescovi, Josiah Jordan James. I mean, he's been around for a minute. And I just bring it up because 4-year, basically a starter. He didn't really start his freshman year. He played behind Kennedy Chandler. But, are you going to have 4-year program point guards like him going forward? I don't know. Jemai Mashak, 4-year guy in that program, defensive stopper, elite guy. It's just going to be hard to keep this thing going year over year over year over year. Now, to Rick Barnes' credit, he's been able to. Now, I actually think he's adjusted very nicely to the portal. I guess I would just say, is he going to be able to keep doing that going forward? That's something that I simply don't know. So you feel bad for Tennessee. 2 great shots. You happen to run into number 1 seeds. One of them played for a title. We'll see what happens with Houston, but we'll see what happens with Tennessee. I still think they're in good shape, but I don't know that they're going to get better shots than they have the last 2 years. The counter to that is Houston. Listen, we've talked so much about this team and this program, but what Kelvin Sampson continues to do for that team and that program, it's unbelievable. Listen, the narrative has been shared about where the program was when he took over, but he takes over. I mean, the stories by now. Rats running through the facility, nobody going to games. They had to hand out tickets, no relevance really on a national scale since the 1980s. They obviously build it up, go to the 2021 Final Four. I still go back to what they've done the last 2 years in the Big 12. It's one thing to do it in the AAC, right? But we all wondered how they're going to do it in the Big 12. They go to the Big 12 last year. They win the regular season outright. They probably go to the Final Four if Jamal Shedd doesn't get hurt in the Sweet 16, but they come back and they just roll everybody. And that's the thing. And I think I've mentioned this, but to me, it's interesting. The narrative of this specific college basketball season, the 2024-2025 season, is that Auburn, to its credit, was amazing for about 80% of the season. They were the best team. They beat Houston. They beat, whoever, Memphis, North Carolina. They beat Purdue. They beat this team. They beat that team. And then they kind of fall off, and that's kind of as you realize, Duke is really, really, really good. Then Cooper Flagg gets hurt. Florida goes on its run at the SEC tournament, and you sit there and say, what about Houston? Houston has just never had that moment in the spotlight all season long because Auburn took the spotlight, then Duke, then Florida. But look at this Houston team. I've said this for sure. 1 loss since Thanksgiving week, okay? So think about December 1st, what we were doing on December 1st. We were picking apart Ryan Day for losing to Michigan. Houston has 1 loss since then. Houston has 1 loss since December 1st. By the way, 34-4 of the 4 losses, 3 were in overtime, only 1 since December 1st, 19-1 in the Big 12. And think about how good some of those teams were. Arizona's no slouch. Iowa State's no slouch. They won at Kansas. That was kind of a miracle game, if you remember. Beat BYU twice, once in the regular season, once in the conference tournament. So this team, I think, is so good and just doesn't get the credit that they deserve. Houston, to its credit, we're giving them a little bit of credit here, going to its first Final Four since 2021. Listen, we're going to talk about Duke here right now, but it's hard to say that anybody should be favored over Duke. But I just bring it up because it is just unbelievable what this team has done throughout this season. And I just don't think they've ever gotten the credit. Say what you want about Auburn, they've gotten their moment in the spotlight. Duke certainly has had theirs, Florida as well. Let's give this Houston team some credit. They are phenomenal and deserve the credit that they are not, I don't believe, at least right now, getting. Let's keep the conversation going, and let's talk about one of the other Sweet 16. I keep saying Sweet 16. It's the Elite Eight. All weekend long, it's been the Elite Eight. So every time I say Sweet 16, just put a penny in the Sweet 16 jar. We'll pay off some bills at the end because it's like, what are we even doing here? But I do want to go back to Saturday, and I want to go back to, I think you can argue one of the more interesting results of the entire NCAA tournament because the manner in which it happened, okay? So you think about Houston, Tennessee. It could have been Houston or Tennessee that won, but we kind of knew how the game was going to go, and the game kind of went like that. Same with Auburn and Michigan State. Physical, tough, elbows, this, that, whatever. Duke and Alabama, we knew were two of the better teams in college basketball, probably two top 5 teams, and it sucked they had to meet in the Elite Eight. It's funny. I give credit to our Torres on Ohio State guy. His name's Dom. We were texting going into that game, and he said, "You know what this reminds me of, Torres?" I said, "What, Dom? What does it remind you of?" He said, "It reminds me of Oregon, Ohio State in the college football playoff, where you knew they were two of the best teams, if not the two best teams." And you were like, darn, why do they have to play so early in the playoff? And that was the way the bracket broke in football. That was the way the bracket broke in basketball. Now, I don't think it was quite that because obviously Alabama wasn't the number 1 team in the country. But I just bring it up because this was set to be an incredible game. Duke puts up 100 on Thursday night against Arizona. Alabama puts up 113 against BYU on 25 3-pointers. Yeah. Never really got like that, never really got that close, and that is because Duke beats Alabama. Final score, 85-65. The same Alabama team that put up 113 points the other night had literally half of that amount on Saturday night. The Alabama team that made 25 3-pointers, an NCAA tournament record, was limited to 8 of 32 shooting from the field. So Duke not only wins, but Duke rolls. And listen, this is no disrespect to Florida, Houston, or Auburn, all deserving number 1 seeds, all deserving Final Four teams. It's hard not to say that Duke is the favorite, though, okay? As far as this game is concerned, listen, I think this game, we talked about the Auburn game being a metaphor for Auburn season where Janai Broome goes down and the other players just step up. Well, I bring it up. This was kind of a metaphor for Duke's season in more than one way. First of all, Cooper Flagg, who I think is maybe the best one-and-done freshman I've ever seen, top to bottom, can do everything. Zion was more physically gifted. Melo won a title, so we'll see what happens, But Cooper Flagg does a little bit of everything. Cooper Flagg was only okay in this game. 16 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists. When you're a freshman, the second youngest player in college basketball, and that's only an okay game for you, you're pretty freaking good, okay? So Cooper Flagg was only okay, but other guys step up. Con Knipple, 21 points in this game, 2 of 4 from 3, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, Malowatch was his usual incredible self, 14 points, 9 boards, 2 blocks. Tyrese Proctor, 17 points, hit 2 threes early that I think kind of set the tone for this game. And I only bring it up to very simply say this, is that it was a team effort. It wasn't just Cooper Flagg. It wasn't just flashy offense. It was defense. And that's the story of this Duke team, is that we get so caught up in the NBA potential and what Cooper Flagg can do with the ball. The defense is the X factor. This is an elite top 10 in the country defensive team, size everywhere. And I would say this is that, and producer Matt, this will be your 2-minute clip right here for Duke, is that when I watch Duke, you know what really stands out to me? I think it's time to have an honest conversation about Jon Scheyer, because I've spent a lot of time on this show and Duke fans think I hate them, but I don't. And I think Cooper Flagg, not Duker Flagg, Cooper Flagg might be the best freshman that I have seen in college basketball. I also don't think Jon Scheyer is getting credit for what he has done with this team, okay? Because, and this is one thing, I'll be at the press conferences this week at the Final Four. I'm going to ask Jon Scheyer, and I'm sure he's talked about it, but he has put together the near perfect team around Cooper Flagg. And I'm so fascinated to know what was his vision the day Cooper Flagg signed and Cooper Flagg committed? Because if you look at this Duke team, first off, the size is unbelievable. And the size just overwhelms pretty much everybody. There's a reason they haven't lost themselves. They've lost 1 game since November. It's because the size is overwhelming. Malowatch, 7'2". Cooper Flagg, 6'9". Their guards, Sion James, 6'5". Tyrese Proctor, 6'5". I think Caleb Foster might be closer to 6'4", whatever. They're the tallest team in college basketball, and the size just overwhelms people. I go back to the North Carolina games, and I remember that first Carolina game at Duke, and I remember everybody, just throw out the records when rivals get together. And I'm like, no. Carolina is so small, they are not going to be able to do what they need to do against Duke. And fast forward, Duke beats them once, then they dominate them in Chapel Hill before the ACC tournament. And that's just what they do to pretty much everybody. Now, Arizona, I thought matched up better with them than anybody that I've seen so far. at least, since ACC play started about 2.5 months ago. And I said, I think Arizona could keep it close. They end up covering. But even with Alabama, they have a lot of size with Grant Nelson, Omayori, etc. But the counter to that is the guards are kind of small. And you could see Mark Sears, as great as he was against BYU, that size of Duke just absolutely overwhelmed Mark Sears. One of the worst games as an Alabama player. That's not a knock. It's just a reality. But that's the truth. That's where we are. That's what they do to teams, especially defensively. By the way, Chris Youngblood, another guy who was unbelievable basically since he got healthy in the middle of the year. He was okay. 10 points, 4 of 9 shooting, 1 of 5 from 3. This is a guy that just one game before that against BYU was 5 of 11 from the three-point line. And so that defense, I just think, is so overwhelming, and we have to give Jon Scheyer so much credit because I think Cooper Flagg as a player has been better than we expected. I think Jon Scheyer has been better than I expected as well. You go back to when he took over the job, year one, win the ACC tournament. I think they were on a 9-10 game winning streak going into the NCAA tournament. They win the ACC tournament, as I said. Last year, listen, weird thing against NC State. They had already beaten them a couple times, whatever. I'm not excusing losing to NC State in the Elite Eight, but we know that NC State thing was kind of fluky, and they were right on the cusp. But then I look at this year, and I think the accumulation of talent, but the accumulation of pieces and getting them all to play in harmony is absolutely unbelievable. The other thing I want to say, and now feels like the time to do it, you know who deserves a little bit of credit for this? It's going to kill you people. Coach K. I was thinking about this. So with Coach K, remember when he announced his retirement, I guess it would have been the summer of 2021, and he said, I'm going to retire at the end of this coming season. And we all took it as, and I'll be honest, Duke fans, you're going to crush me, but it's the truth. I took it as, it's a vanity thing, and he wants his flowers, and he wants this, and he wants that. But what was very clear was that in a changing college basketball landscape, Coach K was basically saying, you know what, Jon Scheyer, why don't you go ahead, you focus on all the behind-the-scenes stuff, and I'll just coach. You go out on the road recruiting. And again, remember, whenever they got a commitment, it was, Coach K's really doing the recruiting. Coach K wasn't even on the road recruiting that summer. So, he really wasn't recruiting. But Jon Scheyer got his staff in place. Remember, at the time, he hired Jay Lucas, who, of course, was the first non-Duke guy to come into that program in forever. Jon Scheyer, now it's the rage for everybody to hire a GM. North Carolina just hired a GM in basketball. Duke was the first team to ever have a GM that I'm aware of in either college football or major college basketball as well. Because he just said, look, I need somebody. This is a new world. I can't be worrying about raising money and NIL costs and how much does this guy want? How much does that guy want? I got to focus on coaching basketball. And so with Jon Scheyer, I think we got to give him credit, but I think we got to give Coach K a little bit of credit as well. Because to me, I just look at the way that Coach K, again, at the time, I think we all thought it was a vanity play. Well, Coach K, he's obviously just doing this to take his flowers, take his victory lap one more time in this. No. Coach K was doing this to have Jon Scheyer get set up, and now you see the repercussions and the dividends that have come with it. Listen, I just said it. Houston's amazing. Auburn's amazing. We're going to get to Florida here in half a second. But Duke's the favorite going into the Final Four. There's no doubt about it in my mind. They just deserve so much credit. And again, Jon Scheyer, the roster and the team that he has put together is just absolutely unbelievable. And you can't give him enough credit for everything that he's done. Really quickly, the fourth Sweet 16, I did it again. The fourth Elite Eight game. Yes, we just finished the Elite Eight. Torres apologizes. That is the 5th or 6th time I've done it. The fourth Elite Eight game was actually the first Elite Eight game. I'll be real. Florida, Texas Tech finished well over 24 hours ago. I don't have a ton of takes on this one. So Gators fans, if you're coming in, I apologize that I'm not going to have more for you on this game. But I just bring it up because this game is well over 24 hours old. And I just want to be quick here because I do want to get to some portal stuff before we get out of here. Because boy, oh boy, was there a lot of portal stuff to discuss here on a Sunday coming out of the weekend, okay? But let's take half a second to talk about Florida versus Texas Tech. Final score in this game was, let me see here. I don't even have the box score pulled up, so I apologize. But let me not do that because that would have X'd me out of the live stream here. That's not good. Let's see here. Final score in San Francisco. It was 84-79. But the story here was that Texas Tech, they were up 9 with 2:50 to go. They were up 73-64 with 2:50 to go. They proceed to just make every mistake imaginable, and it's crazy. Listen, for any Arkansas fan watching, I'm sorry for pouring salt in wounds here, but Arkansas blew a 13-point lead with 4 minutes to go. That's nothing on what Texas Tech did. 9-point lead with 2:50 to go. And it's funny because, I go back to Thursday night show, and when we talked about that Arkansas game, we said it was basically everything that could go wrong did for Arkansas. Missed free throws, weird foul calls, weird this, weird that. And oh, by the way, Texas Tech did a lot to win that game. Well, I bring it up because this was kind of the same for Texas Tech. Think about all the things that had to go wrong late in that game. You missed the front end of 2 1-and-1 free throws. You hit 2 of them, you get another 2, you just never know what's going to happen. There was a bunch of missed wide open shots. We'll get to the big one in a minute. There was the 10-second call, which I thought was huge. You're trailing by 3. You have a 10-second forced. You don't realize it. And with 1 second left before you're about to force a turnover and get the ball back down 3, it might have not even been down 3, but whatever. You would have gotten the ball back, and instead you commit the foul, and you send Florida to the line. And then there was the 3. Certainly not going to blame Darian Williams because Darian Williams was a rock star all game, but had a wide open point-blank look at 3. He cannot hit it, and Texas Tech lost. So 1, it was everything that could go wrong for Texas Tech. 2, Walter Clayton is just that dude, man. And I mean, listen, I just praised Janai Broome. I just said that Cooper Flagg is maybe the best freshman that I can remember watching in college basketball in this one-and-done era. Walter Clayton is one of one as well, okay? Not only is he averaging 18 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists, 39% three-point shooting, he has been as good as any player in this tournament and the best player. I think I tweeted out, just hand him the Final Four most outstanding player right now, because without him, they're not in the Final Four. They're not in the Sweet 16. How about that? This time I actually referenced the Sweet 16 correctly. Go back to that second round against UConn. If he doesn't make play after play after play after play, Florida's not even in the Sweet 16. They survived UConn thanks to Walter Clayton. And then in this game, he was just unbelievable. 30 points in this game. We talked about it after the UConn game. I think he had 13 points in the final 2 or 3 minutes. No different in this game. Walter Clayton, 2 late 3-pointers, again, down 9 with 2.5 minutes to go, about 2:50 to go. And, I mean, he was just unbelievable. He just really was. I don't know what else there is to say. From the Texas Tech side of things, you just feel terrible. You just feel terrible. I mean, there's nothing else to say. You had things in control. You had everything in control, and you couldn't close it out. Texas Tech can't get the win. Listen, the good thing is Grant McCasland, he's young. He's going to be back. And the one thing about Texas Tech, and then we'll get to the portal, is with Texas Tech, I think it is worth noting this, is that McCasland is young. I think he gets the NIL stuff. And listen, Texas Tech's budget is way bigger than anybody realizes, okay? We've heard the stories about the football program basically screwing up the whole NIL market for everybody else. Texas Tech has a softball player that's making $1 million this year. Literally, Google it. It's a thing. And so Texas Tech, they're going to be back because they have a coach that's really good, but I think he kind of gets the portal. JT Toppin, I would guess, is one of the highest paid players in college basketball. You never know. They just handle their business, keep it low key, keep it behind the scenes. Money doesn't ever come up publicly as an issue. And they're just like, you know what? We're going to go out. We're going to put together a great team. And I think they're going to be back every single year, year over year. Some of these programs, I'll say this, and I'm not going to name anybody specifically, but there are some of these programs where it's just like, financially, are they going to be able to stay competitive in this new era the deeper that we get into it? And you just don't know. Texas Tech will never be one of those teams. So they have the money. They have the right coach. They'll figure it out. It doesn't make it any less painful. Texas Tech was on the verge of their first Sweet 16, or I don't know why I keep saying Sweet 16. First Final Four since 2019, when, of course, you know who was the head coach there. They don't get the win. They'll be back. But again, it's no different than Auburn with Janai Broom when he goes down. You just never know when you're going to have an opportunity like that again. So Texas Tech wins. To me, the story was Florida. It was Walter Clayton. But you can't deny that, man, oh, man, oh, man, that one has to sting if you're a Florida fan. If you're a Texas Tech fan, I'm saying everything wrong today. You know what I'm not going to say wrong, though? Portal stuff. Because this is what we're going to do. We're going to come back. We're talking transfer portal. The portal was insane this weekend, okay? We're going to come back. We're going to talk commitments. We're going to talk visits. We're going to talk this. We're going to talk that. Big news at UCLA. Indiana, it's getting interesting. UConn, Kentucky gets a commitment. We'll take a quick break. A lot of portal. Be right back. What's up, everybody? It's AT, and listen, long day of podcasting. Sometimes don't always look the best. So look at this. It's a little bit not great, okay? Well, here is the great news. The great people at Firebox said, Torres, you're a professional. You just got 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. You need to look better. And so they sent me a couple awesome things. I want to pull them out for you right now. This is all from the winter collection, by the way. Spring collection is coming out. We got the vest, very, very, very nice. The sweater, very professional for when I go to professional events. We got these nice blue jeans. I think the question now everybody's asking is, Torres, how do you actually look when you put that stuff on? Let's find out. Well, what do you think? Sweater fits perfectly. Great for all occasions. When I go to games, when I go out to a dinner, warm weather, cool weather, it's perfect. Speaking of perfect, these jeans are phenomenal. Great for games, great for social events. Oh, by the way, a little bit stretchy if those New Year's resolutions aren't going on as planned. Really quickly, we got to try out. Let's try out the vest. It fits perfectly. Not a surprise. So here's the deal. If you want to look as good as Torres, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to Fioboc.com. That's Fioboc. Fioboc.com. And here's the best part. For listeners to the Aaron Torres pod, you get 20% off with code Torres20 at checkout. We also put a referral link in all of our YouTube videos. Thank you to Fioboc. By the way, make sure you're following them on social media at Fioboc. Thank you to Fioboc. You want to look as good as Torres, check them out. Again, promo code Torres20 for 20% off. Ooh. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So Jacob Petruzzi sort of just dropped a nugget in here. We're going to get to it in a minute. I knew Silas DeMary was visiting St. John's this week. Did not know about UConn, so we're going to get to that in a minute. But let me reset. I'm back. Good to be back. We got a lot of portal stuff, okay? If you like portal, sit back, grab a cold one. This was one of the craziest 72-hour stretches that I can ever remember in the portal. It's only going to get crazier. I think Monday with 12 more elite teams were eliminated since Thursday night. So think about the players on those teams that could end up in the portal. I think it's going to get crazy, but this is what I want to do. I want to spend I don't want to say just a few minutes. It's probably going to be a long segment talking about everything that happened in the portal over the weekend. The last time we did a portal deep dive was like Tuesday, although I did do a Donovan Dent segment on Wednesday or Thursday. So let's start with all of the portal news dating back to Friday of this week. We'll start with commitments, and we'll do visits, news, notes, whatever. But speaking of commitments and speaking of Donovan Dent, let's start there. I know it's a little bit old at this point, but I got to give credit where it's due. Mick Cronin, I was not familiar with your game. Okay, so as I mentioned, the last time we talked portal on the YouTube channel, I did kind of a quick segment on Donovan Dent. I had a lot of people hitting me up. Torres, it feels like his recruitment is ramping up. And I'll be real, I did a huge segment on him. And basically I said, look, is that two things. Was that all the buzz indicated that Kentucky was the leader at that point. And I said on this show, point blank, end of story, I said, I just don't know if UCLA is the kind of program that's going to spend the kind of money on a player like Donovan Dent that you need to spend to land him. Listen, I'm just going to say it. The going rate for elite transfers right now is about $3 million for an individual player. We can argue, is it right? Is it wrong? Is it this? Is it? That's what the cost is. And so for me, it is hard for me to blame, and I don't care about the prices, okay? But at the same time, I just didn't think UCLA had that kind of budget to land a player like Donovan Dent. Well, apparently I was wrong, because about 48 hours after I put out a video saying that Kentucky was the leader, he commits to UCLA. Fight. And I got to give credit to Mick Cronin, man. Listen, first of all, I'll say this. The video that I did on Dent, made quite some rounds in the UCLA circles. I'll be real. I think UCLA is in a little bit of a better shape financially than I realized. But there's nothing else to say. Credit to UCLA. Credit to UCLA for identifying this kid. He's a SoCal kid. He played at Corona Centennial. And I think the thing that's important too, he wanted to stay in LA. He wanted to be a Bruin. He was recruited by UCLA out of high school. I think they kind of went in another direction. But I just bring it up because I didn't think that they had that kind of money to land that kind of player. But they do. I think their NIL budget behind the scenes is a lot better than a lot of people realize. And now you add Donovan Dent with some of the guys that they could have coming back, that they should have coming back. This team has a chance to be very special. I saw John Rothstein say something to the effect of he believes they could be a top 5 team coming into next season. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but Tyler Bilodeau, I assume Adai Mara's coming back, Eric Daly. This is an elite team. UCLA fans, you roasted me. I deserved it. Credit to you. I think Donovan Dent is about as good as anybody that has entered the portal all offseason, and you landed him. Let's keep it going quickly on other commitments. This one caught me by surprise, to say the least. Trayson Eaglestaff. Okay, so we've talked a lot about him. Played at North Dakota this year. Was one of the leading scorers. Really, I wouldn't say he's one of the leading scorers in college basketball, but he's one of the microwave oven type guys of college basketball. Averaged, like I said, between 18 and 19 points per game, a little closer to 19, 35% from three. But remember, we've talked about this. 40 points against Bama, 51 in the conference championship game, okay? And so he enters the portal. There's a lot of Kentucky buzz early. I assumed Alabama would get into the mix. And then on Sunday, wake up to the news that he has committed to South Carolina. So credit to Lamont Paris for getting this done. I'm not ever going to criticize a player or coach or whatever for a decision. It is surprising and not surprising. I think it's surprising to me. South Carolina, listen, it's not surprising because South Carolina needs way more offense than they had this year. One of the slowest tempos in all of college basketball. They really relied on their defense. They really just didn't have a guy that could just go out and get buckets and make a play. And so they needed a guy like this. And listen, I don't have all of the details, but I'm sure that they basically, spent top dollar for him. Again, it's this world. I have no problem with it, whatever. The counter to that, though, is that, I'm just surprised that this kid wanted to go there because South Carolina does play at a very slow tempo. I don't know that the offense will fully be able to be featured the way it would be in a Mark Pope system, in a Mark Few system, in a Nate Oates system. So it's surprising, but hey, credit to South Carolina for getting it done. This guy, I would expect him to be their leading scorer. By the way, I know I said South Carolina didn't have anybody that could really get him a bucket. Obviously, they had the star there. Colin Murray Boyles was phenomenal. They needed some offensive help. They get it in Trayson Eaglestaff. Last commit from the weekend, then we got to get to some of the big news and notes. I did not get a chance. I got a lot of requests to do a video on Cam Williams, 6'8" forward, who did commit to Kentucky on Friday. If you listen to our portal update on Tuesday, we actually did talk about him. So my buddy David Sisk from Rivals was the first one to kind of have this piece of news. 6'8" forward from Tulane, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, was a true freshman this year at Tulane, all AAC, averaged about 9.5 points per game, 41% shooting from three. And what's interesting about this commitment, of course, whenever Kentucky, whatever, there's a lot of, he only averaged 9 a game. He only played at Tulane. It's like, listen, ask NBA scouts about this guy, because NBA scouts are like, yeah, that dude could play in the league if he's developed right. And we know he is going to be developed right under Mark Pope. And so to me, I look at the decision by this kid to come to Kentucky, and I look at the decision by Kentucky to recruit this kid. I think it's perfect. I think it is actually a perfect fit. Let me explain why. Listen, we know that Kentucky has kind of needed that small ball 4, stretch 4, whatever you want to call it. They went after Caleb Wilson in high school. Nate Ament is still available. But to me, it's like, are you going to pay top dollar for a true freshman who's never played college basketball? Or go get a dude that's probably, frankly, a lot cheaper, and then spend way less money for a dude that's played college basketball, that's going to produce, and if everything works out, has NBA upside. And so to me, I love the fit of this kid. Now, look, Kentucky has a lot of work to do still on this roster, At some point, we'll talk about their offseason. We'll kind of look ahead to their offseason. And certainly they've had an interesting couple days in their own right, but they needed that stretch for this is the kid that they get. Listen, this is a kid that it wouldn't surprise me, almost like Otega Owe, where we're talking about him. Nobody was talking about Otega Owe as an NBA prospect at this time last year. Would not surprise me if Cam Williams came into the SEC, was very good early, and we're talking about him as an NBA prospect next year or the year after. So credit Mark Pope for getting his first commit of the 2025 recruiting cycle. All right, we've talked enough about where guys are going that we already know. Let's get to some very interesting developments for players entering the portal, okay? So the first big one, we got to talk about RJ Lewis, okay? So if you pay attention at all to Burner, Twitter, and listen, Trilly Donovan, whoever it is great at what he does. Friday night, I'm sitting there watching the Sweet 16 games, and I start getting texts, dude, are you hearing RJ Lewis is entering the portal? And I was like, no, I'm not hearing RJ Lewis is entering the portal. And then you hear it again, and you hear it again, and you hear it again, and you hear it again. And you're like, yeah, I need to look into this a little bit more. So first of all, I should say RJ Lewis, 6'8" forward. You may remember him for one of two things. One, he was the Big East player of the year. Okay. So this kid was phenomenal. He was a guy that was one of the biggest, if not the singular biggest reason why St. John's had the success that they did winning the Big East regular season and Big East tournament. I think it was a collaborative thing. I don't want to disrespect Kadari Richmond. I don't want to disrespect Aaron Scott, Zuby Ejiofor, etc. But he was obviously the best player on the best team in the Big East, okay? So we remember him for that. We also remember him for getting benched in the NCAA tournament against Arkansas. And so when we start to hear he's going to enter the portal, you wonder, is he solely entering the portal because he got benched? And I'll tell you this, it becomes official on Saturday. I did my homework. This is a very interesting situation. Okay. By the way, you can see on the screen 18.7 rebounds per game. Is that with RJ Lewis? This is the way that I would frame it. Okay. I don't think he entered the portal because he was benched. I do think the benching was maybe a symptom of more underlying issues between him and the coaching staff. And maybe it shouldn't, maybe this was the inevitable way that it was going to end. Okay. So RJ Lewis is in the portal. He's entered the NBA draft as well. A couple things. Like I said, I don't think this is just screw Coach Pitino. I think this is mutual. I don't think let me put it this way. He was not forced out. I don't think Rick Pitino is crying any tears. Okay. You know how I know he's not crying tears? He gave one of the most blunt statements that I have ever heard when the news came out. Producer Matt, if you have that tweet, I would love it right now. It's from Zach Braziller, who does a great job covering St. John's for the New York Post. Rick Pitino on RJ Lewis leaving. Quote, "We would not have had the season that we had without RJ." Okay, that sounds good. Very nice. Oh, he continues. He says, this is again from Rick Pitino, "But I do think RJ should try and make the NBA. He's reached his potential with us. Now I think the NBA is his calling, and we're rooting for him to make the NBA." Let me ask you this. Have you ever heard any coach, about probably a guy that's a late first round, early second round pick, say, he's reached his potential with us, go get him, Tiger? That to me sounds like a statement of, yeah, you're not really welcome back here. And I don't know exactly why. I don't know exactly what happened, but it is clear there is friction. Now, I will say right before we came on air, I did start to hear that I think RJ Lewis is kind of having some second thoughts, that now that he actually entered the portal, people are starting to ask questions, the same questions that I just mentioned. What is up with that benching? Why did Pitino not play him? Is he, I'm not criticizing the player. I am telling you what people in basketball are saying. This is not a tear down RJ Lewis situation. What it is, though, is a very simple statement of people are asking the question. So he gets benched one, and then he immediately hits the portal. Is there something more we need to know about? So I think all of a sudden, NBA people are asking more. I think there's more questions. But I'll also say, if he decides to come back to college, he is the number one player in the portal, bar none. He is still elite, 18 points, 7 rebounds per game. We can criticize the bench and we can criticize the portal stuff. He is an elite A++ player and will be an elite college player. My hunch right now is that he does go pro. And I think that if he came back hat in hand to Rick Pitino and basically said, I need a better attitude, that he would be welcome back at St. John's. But I'll also say this. If that dude stays in the portal, good freaking luck, because he's the best player available. Let's keep it going. Producer Matt, is Silas Demery next? He is. And we should bring up what Jacob Petruzzi just said in the chat, because Jacob Petruzzi, breaking news, Travis Branham puts out that Silas Demery is set to make his first 2 visits to St. John's and UConn this coming week. Okay. So first off, let me even backtrack. Thank you for the information, Jacob, because I did not see that live. So Silas Demery, he was kind of a guy that caught my eye, all year. You're kind of watching Georgia. They're an NCAA tournament team, but they're playing in all these big games. And everyone's focused on Asa Newell, but I'm like, who's this Silas Demery guy? 6'5", super athletic, gets to the rim. I wouldn't call him a point guard. I would reminds me a little bit of Otega Owe from Kentucky. Like, you put the ball in his hands, he's going to make plays, but I wouldn't necessarily call him a point guard necessarily. So I bring it up because when he hit the portal, I was like, oh, that dude is really, really, really good. On the season, by the way, you can see on the screen there what he did over the course of the year. Was excellent as a member of those Georgia Bulldogs. Finished the season 13 points, 3 assists per game, to go along with about 2 steals. And so I just bring it up because he is one of the elite players in the portal, and you can see it by who's recruiting him. First of all, credit to my buddy Jacob Polachek from Kentucky Sports Radio, put out that Kentucky's full staff came in to visit with him on Saturday night. So I always say it, when the full staff comes in, when we're talking about not only the head coach, but multiple assistants, that is a guy that the staff really wants. Kentucky had a full staff. But like I said, I also heard that St. John's was going to be in the mix. Also, I knew UConn was going to go after some big fish. This is the kind of guy that they need. So we will see what happens. This guy, listen, I'm going to put out my first portal rankings later this week. This is a top 5 portal player, no doubt in my mind. Going to be a star. The kind of guy every team needs. 6'5", as I said, super athletic, 13 points per game. Pretty good 3-point shooter too, 37%. This is the kind of guy UConn needs. Quintessential St. John's guy. Really, really, really good. By the way, one quick St. John's note. Bryce Hopkins coming down to St. John's and Georgetown. I do think it's probably going to be St. John's. I think it could happen actually pretty quick. By the way, one other thing before we keep it going. I should mention producer Matt's done a good job of kind of keeping the scroller going. CBB transfers on Twitter. CBB transfers on Twitter. CBB transfers on Instagram for all your late breaking portal news. CBB transfers, Instagram, Twitter, and more. Let's keep it going. So we've talked RJ Luis. We've talked Silas Demery. Let's go ahead and talk Keyshawn Hall. This one, sometimes you could just read the tea leaves. You kind of can just see where something's going. So Keyshawn Hall was the leading scorer in the Big 12 this year, okay? On the season, Keyshawn Hall averaged 18.5 points per game, 35% three-point shooting. He's about a 6'7", 6'8" wing, but he's really a guy that has the ball in his hands and needs the ball in his hands to have success, okay? So about, 4 or 5 days ago, he enters his name in the NBA draft. And then on Friday night, I see that he's also putting his name in the portal. And when I saw he put his name in the portal, I was like, yeah, somebody reached out to him and was like, we got a bag for you if you decide to come back to college basketball. So this, again, was the leading scorer in in the Big 12 this year, 18.5 points per game, over 7 rebounds per game, 35% three-point shooter. And we find out over the course of the last couple of days that I was exactly correct. Not that I'm taking credit for it, but some of the biggest names in college basketball reached out. Kansas has already, I believe, had a phone call with him. Auburn has already had a phone call with him. I know Arkansas wants to get in the mix. Kentucky is scheduled to have a phone call with him. So I just bring it up because, this kid is a baller. He's going to go somewhere. Now, I will say with him, this will be his 4th school in 4 years, UNLV to George Mason to UCF, UCF to wherever. He's a really good player. Does kind of need the ball in his hands. I'll be curious to see where he lands, because you think about some of these teams, Auburn, you assume will have Todd Pettiford next year. Kansas is definitely going to have Darren Peterson. I just wonder what's the right spot for him. But 18.5 points per game in the Big 12 gets the job done. Let's keep it going. because to me, what I think we're going to see here, Indiana fans pay attention. I think this is the week that Darren DeVries at Indiana makes his first big moves, okay? Darren DeVries took over 2 weeks ago. I think he's been quietly getting his staff in place. I think he is quietly making moves. And he's quietly actually got a very busy week lined up ahead. By the way, worth noting, if you follow Indiana, you already know the entire team is gone. Literally not one holdover is still in the program right now. I believe Bryson Tucker was the last one. He entered the portal late last week, but Malik Renew is gone. Mackenzie Mbako is in the portal. Miles Rice is in the portal. Cannon Carlisle is in the portal. But I bring it up because he's going to start making moves. And one of the first guys I would watch out for is right there. Flory Badunga, 6'10" forward, McDonald's All-American a season ago, ends up going to Kansas. It was so funny on Saturday. There was no games until late, so I'm starting to put together my stuff for the offseason, my way too early top 25. You pencil in Flory Badunga coming back to Kansas, and then literally like 10 minutes later, he enters the portal. So I will be real. I watched a lot of Kansas games this year, and I just bring it up because when I watch Kansas, I would have sworn this guy averaged like 12 and 10. He only averaged, as you can see on the screen, 5 and 5. But he is a load. He is a monster. And if you have watched Kansas, a couple things. One, he is only starting to scratch the surface of his potential, new to basketball. And he had some big games against some good teams, okay? 19 points and 7 boards in a loss to Houston, 10 points and 11 boards against UCF, 10 points and 10 boards against TCU, 8 points and 11 rebounds against West Virginia, which, of course, ironically is where Darren DeVries coached. And so he is even, don't let the stats fool you. Another guy, I'm comfortable saying top 5 player in the portal right now, in my opinion. Now, the big question is, where is he going to go? Well, he's from Africa originally, but he did do his senior year of high school in the state of Indiana. So Indiana is believed to be a favorite. I believe they are working hard to get him on campus sometime in the next few days. It might be as early as like Monday or Tuesday. And so I'm not saying we should be quite on commitment watch yet, but I would think Indiana should be in good position with Flory Badunga if he decides to stay in the portal. Now, a couple things. 2, I would also keep an eye on Auburn. Remember, Flory Badunga chose Kansas over Auburn coming out of high school. Auburn obviously going to have a big hole in the front court to fill, not only with Janai Broome, but with Dylan Cardwell as well. This is a kid that could step in and probably play 30 minutes a game. And it's also worth noting that on top of that, Flory Badunga in Joe Tipton's tweet did leave open the option of returning to Kansas. So it doesn't sound like that's out of the picture. At this point, I would probably guess Kansas maybe isn't exactly where he lands. You just never know. But yeah, he is really, really, really good. Speaking of Indiana kids at other schools that I think Indiana's maybe quietly behind the scenes working on, let's talk a little bit about Ryan Conwell, okay? Ryan Conwell, 6'4" guard, played at Xavier. This is a great story, okay? So this is just, some people just hate the portal, but some kids ball out at one level and they get the opportunity to show it at the next level. So this was a kid that was part of Indiana State's team. Remember, Indiana State last year was ranked in the top 25 for most of the year. They lose in the Missouri Valley Conference tournament. They go to the NIT, and they finish as the runner-up in the NIT. Their head coach, Josh Schertz, leaves to go to St. Louis, and their players go all over. Avila followed Schertz to St. Louis. Julian Larry was a kid who went to Texas. But then, oh, by the way, Ryan Conwell goes to play for Sean Miller at Xavier, and he balls out. He averaged 16 a game 2 years ago at Indiana State, averaged 16 a game at Xavier, and proved he is a high major player. So he's got 1 year of eligibility left. Listen, he's about 6'4". He's a little bit undersized. So I guess what I would say is that, if you're looking for players that, if he was 6'7", he'd be in the NBA. But he's 6'4", a tiny bit undersized. It doesn't change the fact that, in my opinion, he is a big, big, big time player. Another player, he's from Indianapolis, played at Indiana State. I would expect him to visit Indiana in the coming days. Don't know if anything's set. I'm sure Sean Miller is going to try to convince him to come down to Texas, take a visit, whatever. This kid can play, though. I'm kind of, again, loosely throwing out rankings. I would probably put Ryan Conwell in that top 10 type player. but great player, 3-point shooter, 38 points in a win against Marquette earlier this year, or a loss, against Marquette in the Big East tournament, but 16 points per game, 41% from three. Ryan Conwell, Flory Badunga, Indiana guys. Josh Dix, kind of worth keeping an eye on as well. This was a player who went into the portal after Fran McCaffrey was fired at Iowa. And Josh Dix has kind of been in the portal for a few days, and recruitment's kind of coming down to the wire. Now, I will say, reports were he was on a visit this weekend to Illinois. By the way, I should always mention this stuff is always subject to change. So I could say, oh, this kid's going to do this, and he could commit somewhere else today. That's just the nature of this sport at this time of year. The same time, though, took a visit to Illinois. And I only bring it up because he is expected to, again, visit Indiana this weekend. I have it on authority that the expectation is that he will be at Indiana. So another guy that kind of fits the way that Darren DeVries wants to play. This is a kid from, again, he played at Iowa. Listen, I know things got weird with Fran McCaffrey, but we also have to give Fran McCaffrey credit for the way that he developed some of these guys within the program. And Josh Dix is the one of the best examples yet. 41%, closer to 42% from three. A great shooter, a great scorer, got really good this past season. Indiana fans, correct me if I'm wrong. There's some tie. I think he played AAU with DeVries. By the way, I should have mentioned, I think there's a little buzz that Flory Badunga's AAU coach might be hired by DeVries. So DeVries is putting in work, but Josh Dix is expected to visit. Conwell, we will see. Flory Badunga as well. Let's keep it going. A couple more names. We'll get out of here. I think this segment's at like the 20-minute mark already. KJ Lewis. So let me get a quick swig of water first. All right, KJ Lewis. So I really like KJ Lewis, okay? It was a weird couple years for him in Arizona. So he goes to Arizona. He was a little bit under-recruited coming out of high school. Me and my buddy Mike Luke always used to joke he was like a fringe top 100 prospect, and everybody was like, how is that guy not a top 100 prospect? Goes to Arizona. Remember last year, they were 2 seasons ago. So not this season that just ended against Duke, but 2 seasons ago, they had Caleb Love, they had Keyshawn Johnson, they had Pella Larson. They were just loaded with dudes. And KJ Lewis was kind of a guy off the bench that every time he came in, you were like, oh, who is that guy? Super athletic, super skilled, shot the ball well as a freshman, comes back as a sophomore. And it was just a strange year. Started the season in the starting lineup. It didn't really work. To his credit, I thought it was actually pretty noble of him. Decided to ask to come off the bench, said he thought that the team would be better with him being the 6th man. Still ends up as the 3rd leading scorer on that team, 11 points per game. The athleticism jumps off the page. I remember we talked about this throughout the tournament. I remember mentioning this last weekend. Robbie Hummel and Jalen Rose were calling the 1st round and 2nd round games in Seattle. And they were like, this Arizona team is so athletic, so skilled, so talented. And part of it was KJ Lewis. Now, a couple things. One, the 3-point shot just fell off a cliff. And I don't have an answer why. I don't know if there was some injury that we don't know about. I don't know if it was a confidence thing, but he only shot 20%. But this guy has NBA athleticism. I still believe he will play in the NBA someday, but maybe he just feels like he needs a fresh start going forward. I saw my buddy Jason Shear tweet out that he thinks that Georgetown could be a factor here. I don't know if there's some fit that I don't know about. KJ Lewis is originally from Texas. He actually grew up in Tucson. I remember talking to him about it last year when Arizona was at Staples Center for the Sweet 16. So yeah, apparently Georgetown is a factor. Now I will say, and I say this about all these guys, once they enter the portal, it's a whole new world. And I think there's probably a lot of coaching staffs that had no idea that KJ Lewis was going to be available. And now that he is, they're like, you know what? We're going to go ahead and try to get that guy. So KJ Lewis is on his way out, and we'll see what happens from there. Really quickly, I do got to talk quickly about my UConn Huskies. We mentioned it earlier in the segment. Silas Demery is going to visit this week, according to Travis Branham. So good scoop from Branham there. I knew he was going to St. John's. Did not know that he was going to visit. UConn. Both those schools will clearly be in hot pursuit of that guy. By the way, with Silas Demery, should mention, because I know the NC State fans and the UNC fans are going to get mad at me. He is from North Carolina. There was some early Will Wade, North Carolina State buzz on him. Also, we know UNC is basically putting together a whole new team. So I don't want to forget North Carolina fans. I don't want to forget NC State fans. Silas Demery's a stud. He's from North Carolina. It would not shock me if he ended up at one of those two schools. All right, back to UConn. Busy weekend. We just heard Silas Demery is visiting, but two guys enter. One guy announces he's coming back. The two guys that enter, you see one on the screen right now, Ahmad Noel. You know, I feel bad on a couple fronts. This was a top 40 recruit. Outside of Liam McNeely, he was kind of the belle of the freshman class in 2024 and really had an opportunity to go to a lot of good places. Had some injuries, doesn't end up playing a lot down the stretch of the season. You know, I'll be real. It was a little bit of a point of contention with UConn fans. UConn was struggling at the point guard spot. Hassan Diarra was hurt for most of the year. Aiden Mahaney just did not live up to expectations. And so the assumption was, why are we not giving Ahmad Noel more playing time? But he decides to leave. I will tell you, let me put it this way. There was a lot of friction with the family on social media. When the family gets involved in social media, that's never good. But I'm a believer in this kid. And this is a kid that I believe as he enters the portal, people are going to put on that high school tape and say, this kid can play. I feel pretty confident he's going to end up at like an SEC or a Big 12 type school, and he's going to make a lot of money, and he's going to get playing time, and he's going to be really good. I have no early leaders. I have no early schools, nothing like that. But don't let the stats fool you. Barely played for UConn. I'm not criticizing Dan Hurley. I'm just saying it was what it was. But this kid is talented, and I think he's going to have a chance to do special things. UConn also lost earlier this week Isaiah Abraham, another player in the class of 2024. Him, Noel, and Liam McNeely were the only freshmen on this team. I'll be real. I was at practice early in the season, and I thought Isaiah Abraham really stood out to me. 6'7" forward from Virginia, never really got a lot of run for UConn. Actually just finished the season only playing in 9 games. I just think it was a crowded front court, and so he is going to move on. To me, he feels like a mid-major plus guy. I think he could play at another Big East school. If he landed at a Seton Hall, if he landed somewhere like that, it wouldn't surprise me. Good player, but there's just not that much playing time to go around, especially because UConn did get good portal news. They're trying to figure out who's coming back. They find out that Jalen Stewart, a player who has certainly shown flashes, is coming back. He announced that on Saturday on Instagram. This kid's really good. The stats, again, don't bear it out. But he has had moments where it's like, oh, that's an NBA player if he puts it all together. Remember, this was a guy in the Big East tournament as a true freshman carried that team against Marquette in the Big East tournament championship game. I think he had 10, 12 points in that game. Had a couple double-figure games this year. In Maui, I remember when everybody else was struggling, he had 16 points against Memphis, had 14 in a Big East game against Villanova, 14 in a game against Creighton, 15 in a game against DePaul. And listen, I know everybody wants to throw dirt on Dan Hurley, but this is the kind of kid that could go from averaging 5 as a sophomore this year to like 13 or 14 and being a fringe all Big East guy and maybe being an NBA player. So UConn gets that guy back. They lose 2 guys, but they bring back Jalen Stewart, and I think he's going to be really good. I think that's it for portal. I need a deep breath. I think that's it for portal. Lot of good stuff in the questions. By the way, John says thank you for any of the for the Indiana information. Yeah. I'll tell you what. I didn't think we were going to go that long on portal. So I think I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. If you are not subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod, by the way, people, we'll be doing portal stuff basically every day. We'll probably come back Monday if a couple big names enter, and I think they will. We'll come back and do more portal on Monday. So that's why, if you are not subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod, you better make sure to do so. You can do it on Apple, you can do it on Spotify, Amazon Music, but also on YouTube. 53,000 subscribers we have hit. We very much appreciate your support. And again, please remember, this is not a show that the season ends and we stop talking college hoops. We're going to talk portal pretty much every day until there's nothing else in the portal to talk about. So we'll have updates pretty much daily going forward. Producer Matt and I will be on the ground in San Antonio. So we truly appreciate everything that you guys are doing to make this show go. Speaking of appreciate, thank you, Producer Matt. You know who I appreciate? My friends, my partners. I appreciate Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. So it's March. Told you plenty about Cauli Puffs at this point, but I need to keep telling you because you guys need to try them for yourselves. But it's March. You're on the couch. You're going to be watching Final Four basketball. You need something to snack on that is both healthy but delicious as well. My friends, that's where Cauli Puffs comes in. Family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, he's a sports fan. He was in our Torres Survivor pool. He also is a Rams season ticket holder. He's in LA all the time. And he was sitting on the couch one day. He said, I need something that's healthy and delicious, something my family can enjoy, but something that I can enjoy as well. And that is where Cauli Puffs comes in. Baked, not fried. Avocado oil, no grease. Healthy ingredients, but the best part is they taste freaking delicious, okay? For more information, what you need to do, go to CauliPuffs.com. That's CauliPuffs.com. CauliPuffs.com. You can also find them on Amazon.com. So check them out on Amazon.com as well. But we do appreciate Cauli Puffs support. All for today's show. Time to get out of here. Time for me to go. Thank you to BetUS TV. If you're going to any sporting event, any concert, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. But we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Shout out to Torrin Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick. You got a shout out earlier in the show too, my guy. We'll be back soon. I don't know when we'll do another episode. Sometime soon. Aaron Torres Pod.